Welcome to Erdrea. Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age was available on all platforms in December 2020. I have never played a Dragon Quest in my life, so this begs the question, is Dragon Quest XI good for newcomers? And my answer? We'll get through it in this video, and I also have a rant that I have mostly directed towards those that already beat the game. It'll be properly labeled so you don't have to worry about being spoiled if you don't want to be spoiled. You play as the protagonist, who I named 11, who was born with luminary powers. However, when you were an infant, the kingdom of Dundrasil was under attack, and your parents, who happened to be king and queen, threw you down a river in hopes that you had a better chance of surviving than them. And at the bottom of the river, an old man takes you to his village and raises you. You stay until your coming of age ceremony, in which you head out to see King Heliodor in hopes that he can explain your luminary powers. Unfortunately, he accuses you as an evil darkspawn and summons a manhunt on you, and thus begins your quest of Dragon Quest of dragons. I just don't want to say too much, but that's really what happens in the first 5-ish hours. The story. There are parts that I like, then there are parts that I truly despise, and I felt like throwing my controller at my monitor. I guess my main issue really is the pacing of the story. It gets really bad about halfway through, and it's really frustrating. I'll go over this a lot more towards the end of the video, since I'll be heading towards spoiler territory. But other than the parts that I felt like wanting to throw my controller, the story was alright. It's not the greatest in the world, it can't get predictable most of the time, but it was alright. There's also a side quest that tasks you in restoring the timeline, and when I mean timeline, I mean going to previous, I guess, popular places in previous Dragon Quest games. Please don't quote me, because this is like the only Dragon Quest I've played. But it seems like you can travel to certain locations in all 10 previous Dragon Quest games, and in these locations, you are tasked with whatever shenanigans that are going on, whether it's giving someone holy water to clearing out exploding rocks, or whatever the heck is going on here. Obviously, this is essentially fan service for those that played Dragon Quest in the past, and for someone like me that didn't play any, I didn't really find any joy in doing them except for maybe the rewards that you get from doing the quest within this. The difficulty in this is also very weird. Some are very, very easy, and there are others that are extremely hard to a point where I feel like it's more for post-game content. But it never clearly states how hard these quests are, which really sucks. Thankfully, this whole timeline thing is optional and is not needed to complete the main story. And as I said before, this resonates more with fans of the series rather than newcomers. The graphics are really good. The world is lush with colors, the monsters are very unique and well portrayed through the cel-shaded colors. I think the graphics are probably the strongest part of this game. It just looks really beautiful. The characters are a bit of a step down, but still good overall. I just wish the characters were breathing a bit more, as they always seemed stiff, but that's just me being really picky. All the characters in the party have their tropes that everyone should be familiar with. You recruit them somewhat early in the game, but you won't know them until much later. I'll be going through this a bit more towards the end of the video. Erdrea is also somewhat of a big map, and it opens up pretty early compared to other RPG games. And the main story will take you to nearly all locations Erdrea has to offer. I also want to mention that the amount of diversity in the towns and villages is pretty cool, from the language they speak and the accents they have. There are places where they rhyme everything they say, and other places where they only speak in haiku. Remember, this game was originally made for Japan, so it was the localizations team's job to do all the localizing stuff like this. And I must say, they did a really good job with this. Just something I wanted to mention, as I appreciated this as I was playing. The combat is simple and basic, as you see in every turn-based game. You can decide whether or not you want to be in total control of each character, or you can let the AI control the characters. For most of the game, I ended up controlling 11 and letting the AI control the rest. The AI was doing the right moves most of the time, and the only times I really needed to take over was when I needed certain buffs or debuffs to happen on certain hard bosses. Yes, it's very simplistic, but in my opinion, half the battle is not when you're fighting enemies. Gearing up and specializing into builds that optimize the playstyle you want your characters to do is half the battle. The skill tree is very impressive and was actually pretty cool to poke around in. I personally think that this is one of the main highlights of the game. We'll take 11 for example. You start off with a single sword, but you can specialize into a sword and shield, a double-handed greatsword, or later, when you accumulate enough skill points, you can dual wield with swords. And you actually get a good amount of skill points every time you level up. So you should be able to get new skills every 3 level ups or so. You're free to experiment as well since the cost to respec your skills is little to nothing, which is great. Along with equipment, you can further the build that you want to do, as it is in most RPG games. There's a wide variety of weapons, armors, and accessories. It's almost hard to find the exact ones you're looking for. You can buy weapons and armor from the respective shops, complete side quests, or craft them using the forge, granted that you have the recipe. And you can increase the effect and or power of the item using the forge as well. And I must say, the forge minigame is actually a bit fun to do. And going back to the actual combat, there's a random chance to get pepped, which increases your stats, crit chance from what I've noticed, for a few turns. And if 11 plus other party members are pepped at the same time, then you can do a special team attack or team buff depending on what move you decide to do. It does feel very random, and even though you can increase the chances of getting pepped in the skill tree, it still feels very random in when you get it. Now we go back to the main question. Is Dragon Quest XI good for newcomers? It's a very hard one to answer because there are things like the battle system that makes it really easy for anyone to understand, but yet there are pacing issues and the motifs throughout each Dragon Quest game that are somewhat important that most newcomers will not get right away. So the answer I can really give is that if you're okay with being ignorant as you play through the whole game, then go for it. It's a really beautiful game and optimizing equipment and skills is surprisingly fun. I don't really like giving numbered scores as it generalizes too much and drowns out the positives and negatives of certain features, so if you're looking for an amazing story with amazing characters, I would probably pass on this game. The story suffers really bad pacing issues and the characters are very hit or miss. I may like a couple, but I know for sure that other people will despise them. I don't think there really is a universal likable character, so to speak, and I would probably wait for a more newcomer friendly Dragon Quest game before jumping onto the boat. Now I'm going to cover the issues I mentioned earlier. I am heading into spoiler territory, so I will try my best to be vague as possible, but no promises. So if you don't want to be spoiled then it is probably the end of the video for you. My biggest gripe with the game was the story pacing. I liked how the first half of the story was shaping up. The world opened up, there were places to explore, chests to be found, and things to do. Even though on stream I was complaining about orb collecting, I actually thought it wasn't terrible as it was a way to explore more of Erdrea. It was great being able to almost go anywhere without being locked out. Then you couldn't anymore. Then you were playing as all the party members' side stories, so to speak. I wasn't expecting these side stories to be so long, to a point I was calling them mini DLCs at one point. Just the way it was placed was so bad. When you had everyone going up the world tree, also didn't feel as majestic as it should have been. It was very easy, I breezed through it. No puzzles, no bosses, no challenge. I'm pretty sure my last fight with some monsters on the first floor of the place because I was doing a power level check. So really, it didn't feel like there was a final stand before the literal end of the world. Then I was just playing all the party members' DLC stories. It doesn't stop there though, so when 11 finally wakes up, you have to re-recruit everyone and get your powers back. You are also very limited in the places you are allowed to travel. Fair, whatever, the end of the world did just happen, I get it. But I felt like the restriction was in place for way too long. It really sucks being able to travel anywhere pretty early in the game, and then be very restrictive on a linear path to re-recruit your party members. And this is also when you do the second half of your party members' DLC side stories. It just sucks having the lame climax of the world ending, then having a lot of background stories and flashbacks stacked back to back with each other. Couldn't they just figure out some way to spread these out? Like, get a couple of these stories into the first half of the story, so it doesn't feel like I have 5 different girlfriends trauma dumping to me about something from 10 years ago all at once. I just don't want to be stuck for 12 hours. Yes, it was 12 hours of me trying to speed run through it before getting back into the main story. Just the whole story pacing feels like it started over. Feels like I was playing Dragon Quest XI-2. Like it almost makes more sense if it was pushed into a different game, similar to Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2. The opening scene of Mass Effect 2 has you dead, and then a time skip and a resurrection happened, and you had to re-recruit your team members and relearn your skills. Although Dragon Quest XI wasn't to that extreme, it really felt like it was a different game in terms of story pacing. Another issue I had was really just the lack of modern quality of life. There's no way to see enemy levels, so you don't know if you were out of their league or not. Unless you had a game over, and the game over penalty is so punishing too. You go back to your last save point and you lose half your gold. That's too much. If you said you can redo the battle but lose 10% of your gold, I would have been okay with that. But losing that much and going back to a save point makes it really punishing. Pokemon isn't that punishing. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 lets you redo the fight with no punishment, and Borderlands has a small money punishment with checkpoints everywhere. So it's hard for newcomers to keep playing after their first game over. I even stopped playing at first when I got my first game over when I saw the penalty. And if the difficulty was the problem, the timeline saving quest thing, it was definitely for like veterans, and it was also like post-game content. All those OG Dragon Quest mechanics can be in this timeline quest as well, for all I care, since it's a throwback type gimmick. But for newcomers, don't make it so frustrating and punishing. I think this is the main thing that is really holding me back in recommending this game to other people that never played Dragon Quest, unless they are a hardcore RPG fan. This game was meant for fans of the series and for newcomers. It's not going to be the greatest experience. These were just my personal opinions, so at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. I plan on doing more of these reviews for any games I decide to play, and I will most likely be streaming them as I did with Dragon Quest XI. See you later.